Good morning. It's Sunday. What is the date? At 11:30. I should have stalled. May 17th. And we're getting ready to have sports come back to live sports come back to television. Now, I know we had an MMA fight not too long ago, but we have NASCAR coming in just a few hours. And today has been a crazy, so far, and it's only 11:30. It's been a crazy day of activity and doing a whole bunch of stuff. I'm so happy to be on here with you. As a matter of fact, I have been trying to launch this show for about the last 2 hours, but things keep coming up and things keep happening. The other thing is I'm hesitant only because there's so much I want to share about this one thing, and I'm fighting the urge to go too broad. I do want this to stay focused, and but before we do that, I need to talk about the new logo, the new show name, which is at the Andy Falco Show, and the new intro that you saw, and that is this is just what do you call it? Beta. It's a beta version of what I hope to have in the future. I quickly put a few things together this morning. I knew I needed an intro, so just like in 10 seconds, I put together that intro. I thought it was fairly appropriate. I took a couple pictures really quick and put it in there. And so welcoming your feedback. Understand this. I understand that this is not, and I want you to understand this is not the end product for a logo, the intro, and all that other kind of stuff. So just quickly, I want to talk about that. All right. What I want to talk about, obviously, by the title of this thing is called Flynn, FBI, DOJ, CIA, and a whole bunch of other knuckleheads or something like that. I forgot what I completely titled it because only part of it shows. But there's a lot going on that I know that some folks who, and I want to make sure and not put this in a way that sounds like I'm saying one way or another, but there's some folks who simply don't watch the news, right? I get that all the time on comments. I don't watch the news. What's going on? And the few times that they do, I know those people are hearing certain things and going, oh, dang, he must be crooked because I heard this one person say that person's crooked, or this person's right and the other person's wrong, and that kind of stuff. And sometimes people will ask my opinion and say, hey, I understand. I realize that you watch the news and stuff like that. Can you explain what's happening or why that's happening? The other day, I had a post about closing nursing homes and opening schools. And when I talked about that, doctors are being furloughed and laid off, and nurses and other medical personnel are losing their jobs, and again, being furloughed. Hospital rooms are empty. We have a bunch of convention centers and huge tents and ships, medical ships that were moved to New York and Los Angeles that virtually went unused and are empty. And yet we have these problems in the nursing homes. And I said, well, I don't understand why we don't close those down or partially close them down and move the very sick senior citizens and those that need a greater medical attention, more so than what maybe a nursing home may have. Now, again, I think there's many nursing homes that have some great doctors and things like that. However, are they prepared for something like somebody that's 76, 85 years old with diabetes and other issues that now gets COVID-19? Are they prepared in a nursing home to deal with that? I would venture to say a lot of them are not. All right. So in talking about this, they said, well, I never heard about any doctors being furloughed. Now, this person who said that in an earlier post, another post told me, I'm a what'd she say? Not an investigator. He say, I'm not just somebody who takes the news. I research things. And so I take this comment from another post that say they research things. And then another comment where they say, well, I've never heard about any doctors being furloughed or medical. Like, I didn't hear that, all these things didn't get used. I thought you said you're a researcher. And so sometimes and so that's the reason why I think it's important to kind of change the show. Come on, because I do this stuff for a living. This is what I do. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in just one second. But that's the purpose of doing these shows. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm completely right. And I welcome comments and I welcome information that other people may have, because there is a really good chance. Hey, buddy, Paul Byer. Oh my gosh, I got stories I could tell you of us working at the police department together over there in Anaheim. Hey, buddy, hope all is well with you and your family. Thank you. You too. I understand that you're retired now completely, but I have a feeling you're not just going to be retired. I think that you're probably going to find something else to do. All right, so So there's a lot of reasons why I think that this is important that I come on, talk about these things, and also get rebuttal, right? They're no doubt the people are going to say, I don't think that's true. The other day, I think I mentioned something on another page. I can't remember which one it was. And I said something about General Flynn. And then the very next comment was, he's a traitor. He's, and the guy just went kind of like deranged. I always talk about this derangement, like just went nuts. Like, let's, why do you think he's a traitor? He is, he lied. And so it's these comments where I go, okay, well, I understand that that's your thoughts and your beliefs, but let's look at, really what's going on here and make sure to understand. And I hope Paul stays on, because he may or may not know some of the things I'm going to bring up in just a minute that are true. Or he may choose to be quiet. I don't know. But Paul, you don't feel pressured to comment or say anything. And so first, let me lay some foundation for those of you that really don't know who I am or what my history is and that kind of stuff. So I was a police officer with the city of Anaheim for 21 years. I was a reserve police officer for a couple of years, and then I went full-time. I became a canine handler very early on in my career. After a year and a half, I got the canine. I then was on the SWAT team with the canine and developed a whole lot of new equipment and procedures using a canine in the SWAT team. We also deployed the dog out of helicopter, so I designed equipment for the helicopter. I designed one of the first guns that would have a flashlight on their guns that began to be used all over California, Southern California. It has now become a little bit more of a regular thing to have a flashlight on your gun. That, of course, later on, other people developed things like lasers from the gun, that kind of stuff. I also began to blouse my boots and stuff like that, because we were doing a lot of searches in brush and that kind of stuff, and we always end up with all these things in our socks, that kind of stuff. That slowly developed into something else. I began to wear black T-shirts under my shirt because we believed, because we were the first ones in as canine handlers and SWAT team members. Sometimes on duty, we were the first ones into a dark building, that this little white V made a really nice target for bad guys, especially when we're the first ones coming in. And I got a lot of grief from higher ups that you cannot wear a black T-shirt, and they began to make policies against wearing black T-shirts. But then later on, a sergeant in the same police department decided, we're going to start wearing black T-shirts for the tactical guys. And they go, oh, that sounds like a great idea. That is wonderful. You are so smart. And I'm looking like, hey, wait a minute. 3 years ago, when I brought the, so I'm laying the foundation. All right. I want you to understand that there are things that happen in law enforcement, not just police departments, but in the FBI and the CIA and the DEA and the ATF, Border Patrol, that you kind of need to understand this before you can truly give a lot of comments of what's happening with this investigation with General Flynn. There is an aspect, because it's involving, I got FBI, CIA, who else is involved? Oh, DOJ. And then you have all these attorneys, right? You got the U.S. General Attorney's Office and a whole bunch of other people, right? Those are law enforcement agencies that are in charge of this thing involving President Donald Trump and General Flynn, Carter Page, and all these other people, right? There's a lot of things that are happening in law enforcement that somebody with law enforcement background who understands what to believe and what not to believe. And kind of that's the perspective I'm coming from. So clearly, in my career, I had a really mostly successful time for the major part of my career. But then I said something, I said a few things that wasn't popular with what we call the brass, right? There were a few things that when I began to gain a little bit of traction as a leader in certain areas, especially in the canine area, where there's actually very few people. I can name probably 5 people that have as much experience in law enforcement canine use than most people on the planet. And I'm not telling that because I'm some special person. I've just involved myself and put myself in a position through everything that I've done. I've taught all over the world. I've created training courses in other countries. I've had facilities in other countries. I've trained dogs for every major organization as far as law enforcement in some manner, or advised or consulted on things that are going on today. Many of the things that have to do with equipment and uses of the canine, rappelling out of a helicopter, all that kind of stuff. I, along with a couple other guys, were the first people doing those things, and people looked to us to figure out how we do that. All the way down to creating the first show at a canine association where we flew in. I was the very first one that would put on a show involving helicopter SWAT team members, pursuits into a stadium, gunfire with blanks, and people actually being bit by dogs. And then everybody began to copy it. Again, I'm not placing myself and telling you that because I want you to think I'm some special person. It just happens at the time there was nobody doing it, and I thought, why not do that? And then it kind of caught fire, and now it's being done all over the nation. All right, so if higher ups weren't with you. Fire ups want you, they will get you. That's right. You absolutely know that to be true. All right. And I had a feeling Paul might have. Paul and I have. There's one thing that I did, and if Paul would give me permission to mention it, about translations. I don't know, Paul, if you remember. I think I brought it up on another Facebook Live before. But you as long as you are towing the line, right? As long as you are, saying yes, sir, whatever you say, you're right. You're always right, right? As you begin to gain knowledge, as a canine, I began to gain knowledge and began to learn from all these other. I saw what was right, what was wrong, and then I began to say or do something that the lieutenant didn't want to hear, or the captain didn't want to hear, or the sergeant didn't want to hear. When that began to happen, my career began to kind of slip. Just so you know, it began to take a little bit of a downward trajectory. I went from Officer of the Year, Career Achievement Award. I was featured on the Disney Channel for one of the programs I was involved in, driving a patrol car, and then playing hockey with a bunch of children in a very depressed area of our city, and being featured on the Disney Channel during the Disney Awards, right? So all this is happening. And then once I said something that really wasn't popular with certain administration, the brass, but I knew to be true, all right? It wasn't like I was trying to make something up. There were certain things that were happening that I knew based on everything that I knew and thought through. Then once I vocalized that, and it wasn't what they wanted to do, and it wasn't what they thought, and it wasn't their idea, right? Was not their idea. Remember, I brought up earlier that I had an idea that I thought was fantastic. Everybody hated it, and then it became the brass's idea. Everybody loved it. This is not uncommon. I'm not speaking about anything that nobody knows about it. Thanks, Paul. He said, go for it. And so, and let me just talk about Paul's thing. And so Paul's thing is one of those things where he, and as a Hebrew, I think he's completely versed in using the language of Hebrew. Is that correct? And it could be another one, but I'm pretty sure it's Hebrew. So there is a time, and it still goes on today, where if you can speak another language and you can be used as a translator in a crime, then if you speak that language, you actually get a little bit of a boost in your paycheck, right? So if you speak Spanish, you got more in your paycheck, because now you would be called off of one call and be brought to another call, and you'd be able to translate Spanish at a call. If you spoke Chinese, Mandarin, and you would get a raise a little bit. It wasn't a lot. It was just, everybody wants a little bit more money, right? Everybody would like to have another $20, $100 in their paycheck at the end of the pay period. And why not? If I spoke a language, if I spoke, whatever the Star Trekian language is, if I spoke that, then no, because I probably would not run into somebody that spoke, whatever that is, whatever language. I should have mentioned it. Hebrew. Yeah. He worked 10 years in Israel. So I knew that Paul had this thing. Well, he went and applied and said, hey, I speak Hebrew. It would be great to get, and you can use me, right? I'm sure there's going to be at some point where we may run into somebody, and this is before, we, invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, all that other kind of stuff. But we knew there was an area in Anaheim that had people that were of this particular nationality that spoke Hebrew. And sometimes speaking a language will actually cause people to calm down. Now, understand, you don't always need the language because somebody doesn't speak English. There's people that speak English but feel more comfortable in their native language, right? And when you're interviewing somebody that's been raped, you've been interviewing somebody that's been robbed, you're interviewing somebody that has a traumatic experience, why not bring the Hebrew translator or somebody that understands that culture and that language to do that thing, Why not? And that's why they get paid a little bit extra money, because they have a skill that many other people don't. Now, if anybody had, I think Paul maybe been the only Hebrew translator, I could be wrong, in Orange County, right? I'm just Anaheim. And I was just offended as he was. Like, what? They turned you down? What do you mean? Oh, I didn't tell you that. They turned him down. They said, no, we don't need Hebrew. And I was going, well, it doesn't say you'll get a raise, as far as I remember. You'll get this little perk if you speak any language except for Hebrew. It didn't say that, right? There were maybe some other things, that just people were offended that they didn't think of it first, maybe, and say, hey, Paul, you speak Hebrew, make sure you apply for this so you can. I don't know. Who knows why certain decisions were made? Well, one night, here's the one night, and I swear all this has a point, because I'm going to talk about Flynn and everything that's happening. This does exactly have a point. I promise you that one day I was on a car stop, and again, this was a fib, but what gave me the thought is I knew the guy that I pulled over. He spoke Hebrew, but I didn't need Paul to come and translate for me. But I knowing that Paul was in the midst of this argument back and forth, and there's procedures going through and that kind of stuff that he had shared with me that he was going through. Can you believe? And so I'm on this car stop in Anaheim Hills, and I got ready to go 3K3. I go 3K3, and I go 3K3. Do we have any Hebrew translators available? I have a driver here. I need some help in speaking to him. And there was silence, because it wasn't really unknown that this was happening with Paul. And I think the dispatcher, I forget who it was, I won't even name their names, but they said, confirm you want a Hebrew translator? And I said, yeah, I speak Bark. And I said, yes, I need a Hebrew translator. And they said, I think Paul might have been like 351 or something like that. I may be wrong, 353 or something like that. And they go, 353. And he goes, 353. And they call him and he goes, would you mind helping 3K3? And he goes, no, not at all. And he responds, well, needless to say, I got called onto the carpet by the administration and asked if I really did need one. It turned into a big thing. So what I'm telling you is, you do something that upsets somebody that's in the higher levels of whatever police department. If you don't toe the line, you will be targeted. And I'm not saying that thing with Paul was a thing, but it was one of those things. I'm just giving you an example. And so you begin to, somebody like me, who's kind of hard-headed, you become to get a little bit disgruntled, and you say, okay, you want to play that game? Then let's go. And so that continued on, and that was kind of the, where my life went. I ended up getting a car accident, and they couldn't get rid of me quickly enough. And that's a whole nother story, which I'm sure I'll share at some other point. Got in a car accident, got post-concussion syndrome, really bad. And they go, oh, this is our chance. Other than that, I was totally healthy, completely healthy. But they saw an opportunity to get rid of me. And they said, hey, look, you can retire medically. Here's your medical retirement. Here's all your benefits. Here's everything. Please go. And sent me out the door. All right. But that was way later after this incident. This was really not around the time that everything was happening. So I hope I've laid that foundation. The next foundation I want to lay is that later on, as I was in my retirement, I began to be called as a expert and was an expert in court cases involving quite often to review how a police canine was used in use of force, narcotic searches, tracking for suspects, and for cadaver dogs to solve homicides. And so that would be called by usually a defense attorney, quite often a defense attorney. Very rarely the prosecution would ever call me, but it did happen. But I would get called and say, we need you to look at this case and tell us what you think. And I said, well, only call me if you want the truth, because I will tell you if the dog did great and the handler did great, and I'll tell you if I think the dog did poorly. And they said, absolutely. So over the last 15 to 20 years, I've been looking at hundreds and hundreds of cases. I'm not kidding when I tell you this, that I may be one person, and I probably should look this up and try to figure it out, because there's a pretty good chance that I may be in the Guinness Book of World Records, even more so than some of the more famous people you see speaking as experts in homicides. What's the doctor's name? I forget. He's always on HBO and that kind of stuff. I think I've testified in more court cases than he has, because there was a period of time that every month I was being flown to other states and Canada as an expert witness in federal and state court cases. about 3 or 4 times a month. Sometimes I'd be on the stand 6 different locations in a month. And this went on for years. All right. So when you begin to add that up, that's a lot of time on the stand being grilled by prosecuting attorneys and questioned by defense attorneys and multiple attorneys, because some of these cases have more than 3 or 4 attorneys. At one point, I was followed by a group of U.S. attorneys and deputy attorneys who would show up I'd see them in the galley, and the seats, taking notes about my testimony and cases that they weren't involved in. And they would fly. I'd be testifying in Hawaii. They showed up in Hawaii, no doubt, right? I'd be in Florida. I'd be in South Dakota. I'd be in Texas. I'd be in New Mexico testifying court cases. And I'd see, as I'm on the stand, these U.S. attorneys walking in and listening to my testimony. And what they're listening for is for me to say something different in Hawaii than I do in New Mexico or than I do in Florida. All right. So I began to be targeted. In some of my times in the stand, the prosecuting attorney would bring up YouTube videos. So one of the reasons why sometimes I'm careful on YouTube videos, if you see a big long delay as I'm processing, I want to make sure and get certain things I say right, because they end up in question on video and in pictures when I'm on the stand. Now, understand, I'm there for a narcotics case involving 500 pounds of methamphetamine and $2 million, right? I'm there for that case. A good 2 or 3 hours is spent on me, right? That I'm going through a divorce, that we were having an issue with, custody or getting my kids into school, that kind of stuff. They'll bring up all my book covers and they blow them up and they put them on the screen and say, isn't it true that in this book, right? They read all my books. They watch my Facebook videos, which is probably some of the people watching right now, may be some of those people that are watching to see what I'm going to say about that kind of stuff. And so, and this is dealing with U.S. attorneys, right? U.S. attorneys. They have nothing better to do than to follow me around the United States and listen to what I do and watch my Facebook videos and my YouTube videos, and they show up. I've had them play them in the courtroom. Again, I'm there for something completely different. But what they're trying to do is discredit me and say that I'm saying one thing on one day and something on the other. The good news is they've never been able to do it. That is the good news. In most cases, what they do is they open the door, which is a huge mistake. Is they open the door for the attorney I'm working for to then insert something that totally blows their case out of the water. It's happened on 3 different occasions. They make the mistake of bringing in a YouTube video where I'm speaking about something, and unfortunately for them, is that they ask me a question that they don't know the answer to. They think they know the answer to it, but they're wrong, and we're able to show that. So understand this. So my experience is vast in everything that's going on in regard to what happens in a federal courtroom, state courtroom. I've spoken about the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., in the same room that Martin Luther King spoke in the press corps. And I was very proud of that moment, but being in there, being questioned by the press and on the thing that nobody watched. What's that called? C-SPAN. So I was on C-SPAN in there being talked to. So I understand a lot about how these things work. And I understand when you go against the U.S. government, what they will do to you and what they have the potential of doing to you. So I want to lay that foundation. 21 years of law enforcement. I have been given awards, and people say, "Hey, you're the greatest in the world," and the next day they're saying, "You're a scumbag," and they begin to spy. I've had sergeants parked outside my home overnight, watching me and reporting as to what I was doing on a daily basis, and come out and seen them. I've had officers come to me after my retirement and contact me and say, "Hey, listen, you don't know me, but I was a rookie when you were who you were, and I was assigned to watch you and follow you. And I wanted to apologize that I never told you about it. And I thought it was BS, but I wanted to come out and tell you that I was tasked with following you for I think it was about a month. And so this is what happens when you begin to not toe the line and begin to show people what is true. All right. So I hope I've done enough. I don't want to go too much farther. I'm already like 24 minutes in, and I've laid a huge foundation. And the only reason I want to do that is because I want to also understand that I have a belief that what I'm about to tell you is actually one of the things you have to look at. I'm not telling you necessarily you have to believe me. I just want you to understand what it is you need to look at. All right. So now back to the Flynn case, General Flynn, a 3-star general. Basically, everybody will agree that he is a war hero, that he is knowledgeable and has been an amazing asset to the United States of America on a military level in what he knows and what he does and how he thinks and processes and makes decisions, and well respected in the military side of things. I want you to know also that this doesn't get brought up very much. He's a Democrat. All right. So it's an important thing that you understand that General Flynn is a Democrat. All right. Super important. How I remember that stuff. Thank you. Thank you. And I've left some stuff out. Well, only because of time. I could go on forever. I have the first part of my life as a law enforcement officer, and then I have the closing days of my law enforcement, which is you would not believe the things that go on when you piss somebody off. It's in a level of authority. All right. There was something else I was going to say, and I stopped. See, I'm very good. Sometimes, not always. It's stopped myself. So back to your friend, Democrat, 3-star general, war hero. I forget how many years of service. There's a lot, something like 30 years of experience. He's part of the Obama administration, right? And knows a lot of stuff, right? And so I can't go through all the stuff, but just know that he was part of the Obama administration. He knows a lot. And during the 2016 election, leading up to the election, and then the day that everybody's voting, and then the shock that Trump won. It wasn't shocking to me because I told everybody that he was going to win. I don't understand why nobody believed me at the time. I tried to tell everybody. I said Trump's going to win. I don't know what you're an idiot. You're a racist. You are well, all the other things they used to call a Nazi and a child killer. If you believe he's not going to, I can't believe that you think. I'm telling you, he's going to get elected. Boom, he gets elected. All right. So you got, and at this time, remember, you have a whole bunch of stuff that's coming out. You got the Steele dossier. You got they're trying to say that he's a Russian asset. That all these investigations, at least they're being told to you as investigations. This is where you really need to understand that prior to Trump being elected, they were just really trying to make sure, and they called it an insurance policy. You remember Lisa Page and Peter Strzok are agents with the FBI, or Peter Strzok is an agent with the FBI, and then Lisa Strzok is a special counsel to the FBI and to Peter Strzok, and they had an affair, and they were texting each other love notes, which is great when Trump goes on that thing. So understand that this is happening prior to President Trump being elected, because what they're trying to do is just to make sure nobody on the planet other than Andy Falco Jimenez here in Brea, California, ever thought Trump would get elected. But they create the DNC and Hillary, which we know now because it's come out in court testimony and other documents, congressional hearings that they had, that they paid for it. The Hillary's campaign and the DNC paid for Steele. What's his name? Jeffrey. What's his name? Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele, who was an asset in English. He's from the UK, and again, now there's another story, and I don't want to go too many details. That not everybody thinks he wrote everything else. They have some thoughts that this other gentleman by the name I'm not sure if you can call him that, by the name of Stephen Helper, who was also a spy that got caught in the 1980s. And now they think he actually may have been the one that wrote the Steele dossier and then called it the Steele dossier. So there's other stuff. You'll need to wait for that because I'm going to find out more about that. But anyway, everybody knew. I can't urge you to trust me and what's coming out enough to understand that leading up to the election, that there were a lot of things happening that everybody on the DNC side or the leadership side of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, a whole bunch of people, including John Brennan, who is the director of the CIA. You have General Flynn, had probably heard and knew. It's hard to keep a secret like this. James Clapper, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page. There's a lot of people, right? You have a lot of people that are fully aware of what's kind of happening. They're trying to say, let's just get this thing out there and try to muddy it up a little bit so he doesn't get elected. And it's just enough. The problem is, if you understand kind of what's going on, because nobody thinks this is going to happen. Everybody, they already had all the balloons blown up for the Hillary Clinton, for her party. The champagne was already on ice. Everything. Nobody thought. And so they just kind of hurriedly put this other stuff together, the Steele dossier, and kind of leaked out this information and said all this kind of stuff. Just kind of understand how all that kind of stuff is happening. That this is the world that's happening in Washington, D.C. at the time. That we're gonna kind of put this out there. We're not going to cover our tracks too much, not consciously. There just didn't seem to be a need, right? There was just like, hey, let's do this thing. We'll muddy it up. And then we will, we'll put it out there. We'll leak it to CNN and MSNBC and all these people, these media people. And what they'll do is they'll talk about it as if it's true. And we'll go, yeah, it's true. We think he's a Russian agent. Really? Oh, yeah. And so you have, and we've seen this, right? We've seen videos of this. If you haven't, they're out there. I'm going to tell you, Dan Bongino is one way podcast to follow. You watch him on YouTube or you watch him on his podcast. But he shows you all the documents, all the court documents. He has them and shows them on his show. So I would follow him to get more information about that. And also, you want to make sure and do your own research too. Not just trust. Again, don't just trust me. Don't just trust Dan. But do some of your research. But you have testimony that has now been released, that Adam Schiff has been hoping would never get released, that James Clapper says in the testimony before Congress, no, we never saw anything that said that Donald Trump and the people that work for him were a Russian. We never saw it. But yet on CNN, he says, yeah, it's possible that he's a Russian asset and that all the people that work for him also work with the Russians, right? He had no problem at getting on the news with CNN, not the news. He got on with CNN and MSNBC and saying, I have seen things that give me the impression that they're Russian agents. But then when he's in Congress where he has to swear, because he knows if he lies that he'll be put in jail, he says, no, we never saw anything that said that, that showed us that anybody was a Russian agent on the Trump campaign. Okay. And then you have the same thing with a bunch of other people. All right. So we have a bunch of that stuff. John Brennan is another one who had no problem in the press saying that he's an agent. All right. So you have all this stuff happening. And I'm just trying to, again, kind of set the stage for you so you kind of understand that this is all happening before Hillary gets elected. So what does this have to do with Flynn? Well, what's happening is that Flynn is a stand-up guy. Even though he's a Democrat, he goes, I know this stuff, and he's probably saying, and I don't know for sure because he hasn't actually spoke out about it. He's probably once Hillary gets annihilated. Wow, how come I can't say it? Annihilated? There we go, annihilated, and Trump wins. And I know people say she didn't get annihilated. All right, but in the sense that she did, because you had all these things working against Trump. Everything, nobody thought everything, and still, even with trying to make up a false narrative, he still won. That's being annihilated. Wow, that's being killed in the polls. Wow, that was really hard. That was really hard to get it. I may have had a stroke just now. All right, so you got to understand all this kind of stuff. All right, so let's go through this list again of people that knew what was happening prior to Hillary losing and Donald Trump winning. You had a whole number of people that knew what was going on. How do I know that they knew it was going? Because we know. Right. We know now by documents that have been released that there are statements being made in text messages. This is coming from the White House. This is coming from the top. This is coming from the seventh floor where Comey and McCabe's offices are at the FBI office. Do you not think that Comey and McCabe don't speak to the president on a regular basis? We know they do because they've had meetings together, and those are coming out. They also are part of the people that unmasked Obama's press secretary, who was kind of the guy who keeps his calendar, unmasked Flynn, and requested that he know the name. Now, who do you think he was doing that for? Was he doing it for him so that he could keep Barack Obama's schedule? No. He wasn't doing it because he needed to help with the schedule, right? It's a name that was used so Barack Obama's name wasn't on the unmasking list. And these are very obvious things. I know that people say, no, it wasn't Barack Obama. It was his press secretary. Okay, it's like the chief of police secretary going downstairs to investigator that's investigating, an officer did something wrong and asking for something, but believing that the chief never got that information. The secretary did. Okay, what did the secretary need that information for? right? It's the very same thing. Because they're the FBI, because of the CIA, because they're the DOJ, does not mean they operate any differently. That is why I laid that foundation about what I understand about law enforcement, police departments, how they operate, how they work, and my experience with them when you cross them and when you're with them. Two different experiences, right? When I'm looking through these are court documents. This is a deposition I'm reading right now, which is a pain in the ass. Fortunately, this isn't one from Border Patrol, but because it would be mostly redacted. But this is what I do, right? And I have to read them and understand what is happening and what may have happened, and read a little bit between the lines. You absolutely have, as an expert authority in this area, I absolutely have to read between the lines, because there's things that I need to understand and know before going in. If I didn't have that perspective, then I wouldn't reach and ask for other things, right? So if I see something here that doesn't make sense, I'll say, okay, what we need is the policy for that police department. What I need is there any recordings? Is there any videos of this? Because we have something here that doesn't seem to match. The time doesn't match. The dates don't match. And there's a lot of that going on in this case involving Flynn, right? There's a lot of date. Wait a minute, that date has nothing. No, the date doesn't jive, because they said they didn't get this until, and I'm gonna throw a date out, until January 27th. But on, December 1st, they said they had this knowledge. Well, they didn't get the knowledge until January. How is it that they knew it in December? Right? That's kind of the thing that you can see sometimes in reading deposition. No, it was impossible for them to know that, because they didn't know it until January, according to them, right? According to them, they said they didn't get any of this until January, but in December, somewhere in some document or something, they said, well, in December, we knew that the bank was robbed. Well, the bank didn't get robbed until January. That doesn't make any sense, right? So do you see how that's really, really important? And so as we're moving forward in the progression of how things happen, kind of sloppy. Let's get him. Let's kind of do the same, because he's never going to elect anyway. But just in case, let's do the stuff too. Wow, shit, he got elected. Wow, we now have to cover our tracks. Who's the one person who's not willing to go back and cover the tracks? Probably General Flynn. All right, we know that, because now he becomes part of the Trump organization, and they're going, no, Flynn's no. You can see them in the office. No. He didn't just make General Flynn's part of the Trump administration. He knows. General Flynn knows what we were doing before the election. What are we going to do? We got to do something. And they begin to spy. They begin to tap his phone records. They begin to do a whole bunch of stuff. And you see when you see the unmasking list, which they didn't unmask the call that they accused him of lying on. That's the only one that they didn't unmask, which is a whole nother story, which I'm gonna share with you a bit of a video from Dan Bongino's page. Make sure and he spells this out perfectly of why there's this blank. You have a whole bunch of unmasking of Flynn's phone calls with people, right? And you have this blank, and then you have December. I think maybe it gets in December somewhere, and then you have January. Like there's a big space where nothing was asked for, and that's there's a whole story of that. So make sure and watch that. But you see this rapid, suddenly, like, wow, we got to get Flynn. We got to get him. We can't let him be a part of the administration. We have to destroy him before he has an opportunity to bring, tell him everything that we were doing leading up to the election. And you can see it. I can see it. It's as plain as day. Of course, CNN, MSNBC, Democratic leaders, they say, oh no, what are you obsessing over this now? What are you obsessing over General Flynn? Why do you care? It's not the big. It doesn't matter that they spent 3.5 years of obsessing it when it had to go against Donald Trump. But now when it's going with them, now just in a couple of weeks, they're saying, oh, you're obsessing over it. And now that's all you guys want to talk about, right? It's very strange how now they're stepping back. One thing I meant to talk about in the very beginning before I go any further also is my thought process about parties is not what you think. When I talk about dimwits in the Democratic Party, I'm talking about the politicians or people in the FBI or the CIA or the media. Voters are completely different as far as I'm concerned, as far as my eyes and brain and heart are concerned. I have a lot of really cool Democratic friends that I love. We have debate. We don't agree, all that kind of stuff. But I'm not talking about that. All right, just I want you to make sure that that's clear, because I'll use probably on occasion dimwit, and I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff and Schumer, but I'm not talking about John Fred, who is John Fred. That's a stupid name. John Fred, who's a Democrat voter. No, the voters, unfortunately, are having to go to the leadership, and they're trying to work it all out, right? They tend to watch CNN, they tend to watch MSNBC because that's where their leaders are. They won't go on the other channels very often, and so they go there to get all their information. So I can't blame them that they're not giving them the truth, right? They're just giving them this false narrative, which is not true. Which of course I just got this the other day. Oh, you're believing everything and I'm not. Right? You see these documents, I go through, I'm an idiot, right? I read depositions, I read court documents, I read stuff, and then I analyze and then try to figure out where the truth lies somewhere in the middle. All right. I can see people are watching, but nobody's commenting. So far, you've either not really pissed anybody off yet, or people are just really kind of hopefully interested in what's happening here. All right. So we have the kind of not so big deal, but let's muddy up the waters. Let's say that he's a Russian agent, and that he's in Vladimir Putin's pocket, and all the other things that they said leading up to it. And then now we'll be sure. Now it will be, he wasn't going to get elected before, but now he's really not going to get elected. And then, oh shit, he won. Oh shoot, he won. All right, we got all of our people together. We have President Obama, Vice President Biden. We have John Brennan, Director of the CIA, General Flynn. We have James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence. We have James Comey, Director of the FBI. We got Andrew McCabe, Deputy Director of the FBI. We have Peter Strzok, who is a counterintelligence ops FBI. We got Lisa Page, Special Counsel. Who's we got Joe Pietra, who we can't find right now. Where is he? He's an agent. He was in the interview with Peter Strzok when they interviewed Flynn and said that he was lying, right? But he's suddenly not, he's gone. Where'd he go? They shipped him out. Why? Where'd he go? All right. And then you have Christopher Steele. You got Sally Yates. You got all these people, right? And now they're scrambling. Can you imagine what's happening in the White House, right? They're like, oh, shoot, he won. Okay, we got to make sure and cover our tracks. We don't want any of the stuff to come out. Eventually, they may find out that we made the whole thing up with the Steele dossier, that we'll find out that the DNC paid for it, that Clinton's paid for it. And we hired people to kind of make this false statement and this false thing, this false report that later becomes this huge investigation, right? Because they want to legitimize it and make it look like they believed it and make it look like that it's something real. And so then they have Mueller, who is another tool, right? Who goes, okay, I guess I'll be the guy. I'm old and I can't remember shit. And so they'll believe me that I'm old and can't remember shit. And then when I testify, and you see the panic look on his face when he's testifying, he couldn't get anything right. And I'm going to talk about testimony and testifying and what I see when people testify. And it is totally like he was sweating. He reminded me of the actor, gosh darn it, what's his name, on the movie Airplane. You ever seen the movie Airplane? And when he's flying the airliner that's going to crash, and he starts sweating. I got that feeling that's what Mueller looked when he was being questioned by the no, I don't remember. I don't recall. We didn't do that. I didn't do that. I didn't look into that. I know a lot of stuff, but I didn't know a lot of stuff about the things I was investigating. Wait, what? How did that happen? So you can imagine the chaos, right? And I want you to understand that there's chaos going on in the White House. There is. You can't tell me today when we go and we hear these people being interviewed, well, I don't know. I just don't remember. It could have been, did I look into Flynn's? Did I unmask him? I don't remember. What? It is chaos. And I'm not making this up. I'm trying to tell you that you would have to believe, okay, if you're a Democratic voter and they're expecting you as a Democratic voter, and there's probably not one of you watching, but there might be still on this program. They want your Democratic leadership, MSNBC, the DNC, which is not reporters, but it's a group of an organization, right? And CNN, New York Times, New York Post, they want you to believe when they tell you that it wasn't that. This is normal, right? This stuff happens all the time. This isn't that big of a deal. So of course they don't remember. Of course, it happens all the time. So it was just one of the things that happened on a daily basis. It was like taking a drink of water. It was like when I had General Flynn unmasked, when there was chaos in the White House, when they couldn't believe that Hillary Clinton lost and Donald Trump won, that it was just like breathing air. That is something we did on a regular basis, that we unmasked people that are working for an opposing party that just blew our socks off and won. We do that all the time. That was happening before then. That's what they want you to believe. Is it not? Is it not the craziest thing that they want you to believe that? They think you're stupid. And if I was a Democratic voter right now, I would be so offended if my leadership was treating me like an infant and saying, don't believe what they're telling you because it's normal. All this stuff of unmasking, the intelligence director for the new administration coming in, it's normal for us to surveil him, to spy on him, to wiretap his phone calls, and charge him with something that didn't happen, right? All that stuff was normal. So it's okay that the director of the FBI, that Vice President Biden, that Obama, that Brennan, and all these people that were in the meeting in the Oval Office about this very subject now don't remember anything that they talked about. That they now think, well, we have those meetings all the time. I'm trying to remember. No, I just don't remember why my press secretary would have unmasked. Really, I would be so offended if I were you. I would be. What? It's the stupidest thing. And I can tell you that I've been in a courtroom when they're questioning a canine handler. And now let me just go, because this is no different. Just because they're the CIA director, just because they're the vice president of the United States, just because they're the president of the United States, just because they're still people that when asked a question, give you the signs that they're lying to you. And one of the biggest excuses that we have in a courtroom that I get from handlers, from supervisors of canine units, from other experts that have reviewed the very same case that I have, is that they don't remember. And they don't recall. And they didn't look into that thing that you said that I probably should have looked at. I didn't look into that. They did look into that, whatever that is. If it has something to do with this case and it's that important that's being asked of you while you're on the stand, it is a significant issue. And the fact that you didn't do it, either you're a moron or you're lying. So as a Democratic voter, what they want you to is either believe that your candidate, Joe Biden, I always forget his name. I don't know why. Maybe I'm getting the same thing. Joe Biden is a moron because they don't want you to think that he's lying. Right? They want you to believe that he's a moron because when he says, I thought you were talking about this other thing. Well, I kind of knew that was going on, but I was so busy doing other stuff. What was more important at that time than trying to figure out what you were going to do in the transition from President Obama to President Trump, and you had all this baggage you were carrying? What was more important than that at that time? Nothing. I'm telling you that there was nothing more important than trying to figure out how it was they were going to cover their tracks and all the shenanigans that was going on at the White House at that time, because we know there were shenanigans going on in the White House at that time. It's about the powers. I got to hear it, Stu. Someone must have used my name. I did not unmask 300 people. Yes. Yes. I don't know if that's in my notes, but I think that was one of the other things. I don't know. What? You are so incompetent that you don't know what's happening in your office. That's what you want us to believe. You're in charge of some of the most important things that are happening in our country at the time. Counterintelligence, Russia. I'll throw in China. China. Wow, I've been listening to Trump too much. I'm dumbfounded, right? Obama. Oh, I don't know. I don't remember any of this stuff. I don't remember, right? That's what's going to happen. So as we go forward and this stuff starts to come out, as they begin to say, I don't recall. I'm telling you, when I'm in the courtroom, because what I do is I sit in the courtroom and I listen to the testimony of the handlers, of the supervisors, of the case agents that were involved in certain criminal cases, that kind of stuff, homicide detective, if it's a homicide, and other people that are being questioned. And I sit there and listen to them. And you can have some people, and the only thing I don't like to go against is somebody who's really good on the stand. right? That's hard. But I'm telling you, there's not very many of those people. I'm telling you. I have had the directors of agencies within the Border Patrol and DOJ and FBI that are as dumb as a rock, at least appear to be as dumb as a rock when they're on the stand. And I think mostly it's because they're lying. That is the conclusion, because it's really hard to get up to that level and not have some sense of intelligence, right? You have to have some intelligence because you have to go to all the schools, you have to get certified, you have to do a bunch of stuff. And then they go and they go, so I have a canine handler is an example. So I have a canine handler, and this is what happens in court. So I have a canine handler who's up there. He's been with his dog for 5 years, right? The attorney I'm working for will say, well, how long have you been working with that dog? Well, 5 years. How was your dog trained? I don't know. And what? You were with your dog for 5 years, and let me get this right. You're required to train with him every week, and at minimum, at least every month. That's a requirement in your procedure manual that you guys train together for an 8-hour day, right? At least once a month, and most often once a week. Yes, that's correct. And right now, I just asked you, I asked you, how is your dog trained to search for narcotics? And your answer was, what was that again? I don't know how he was trained. Okay. So you want to, I don't understand. Right. And then sometimes they don't ask a follow-up question. I just go, well, ask them, well, how do you do what you do if you don't know how your dog is trained? What do you mean you don't know how his dog? Where'd your dog come from? I don't know where he came from. You'd have to ask my supervisor or the guy who, you've never asked where your dog came from? Well, can you describe the way that your dog alerts? Well, he does a bunch of different things. He does what? A bunch of different things. Now, understand, when a dog is trained to find narcotics or explosives, they're trained to do one thing. In most cases, it's sit. They search, they locate, they find the source of order, they go to the source of order, and they sit. Right? That's how you answer that question. And so they ask, now they're so perplexed and so flummoxed that now that you've asked, now you've gone to other questions. Now everything is that they don't know. They don't know. Right? Just like that. Just like what I did. Right? They don't know. And yes, so how is your dog? How does your dog have the ability to search for hidden narcotics? I don't know. You're going to have to ask. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that area. Okay, so you've worked with him for 5 years. Do you see where I'm going? That is no different than what's happening here. You would think that guy, the handler, is a moron who for 5 years has been training every week, and in most cases, no less, or in every case, no less than once a month for 8 hours a day, sometimes 10 hours a day, and in many cases, every week for 5 years. And you have to sit there and believe that he has no idea how his dog was trained. He has no idea how his dog searches for and finds narcotics. He has no idea how his dog is supposed to alert for the presence of narcotics. That's what you want us to believe. And I'm going to tell you right now that the judges believe them. The judges believe that he knows nothing about his dog, but yes, does the job. And now we're supposed to accept his testimony that his dog did what he was supposed to do. And now that person, whether he's guilty or not, I don't care. I don't care. Whether there was narcotics, I don't care. I'm just telling you that just based on that testimony, that guy or girl, in many cases it is girls too, is now supposed to go to jail for 25 years. Go to jail for 25 years. Based on that testimony, listen to me. This is super important. This has everything to do with Flynn. All right. I want you to understand where I'm coming from. That based on that testimony, that's a U.S. citizen and sometimes a Mexican citizen is now supposed to be in a U.S. prison, federal prison or state prison, or whatever prison, for 25 years based on the testimony of somebody who works with a dog for 5 years, knows not how they're trained, where they came from, how the dog finds and locates narcotics, and what the dog's alert is supposed to be when he finds narcotics. Do you see what I'm getting at when it comes to the federal government? You cannot just blindly, as a U.S. citizen, a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or whatever you are, and say, all right, it's okay. He doesn't know anything, but we'll take that the dog does, right? The dog knew what to do. The handler doesn't need to know what to do. How is you gotta be kidding me. All right. So you have all this stuff happening. You got people making claims that they don't know what's going on. And I'm going to get to the part in a minute. I wanted to keep this less than an hour, and I'm getting to a freaking hour. All right, here we go. Good subject. We'll replay and see through and through. Thank you. I hope I don't disappoint. Again, William, I respect your opinion because quite often you come on and I really love what you're saying. All right, so now let's get to what kind of is happening here. And I want to just I'm going to skip a whole bunch of stuff. There's a lot of other information, a lot of other things happen. Paul brought up some really good information. Again, this is really goofy, stupid stuff. And the media wants you to believe this stuff. Right? They want you to believe the incompetency of the DOJ, the FBI, and the CIA and the White House all happened at the same time, right? Everything that could go, everybody doesn't know anything, right? They want you to believe that everybody in those organizations, which we have been told since I was a child, were the best in the world. These are the best of the best of the best. These are the people that are keeping us safe, that they have been trained, that they have experienced only the best rise to the top and become the best, and they're keeping us safe. They have our best interest in mind. These people that spied on a U.S. citizen and now don't know anything about how that happened or why it happened or who did it or why they did it or when it was done. That we're supposed to believe that, oh, it's okay. These mistakes happen all the time. That we were, as a matter of fact, Peter Strzok in one of his text messages, due to our incompetence, we were able to keep this case open and then eventually, make up a story that General Flynn lied, right? Due to our incompetence, he says, right? Is he sending out a message that he wants to show that there's some wiggle room because on occasion we're incompetent and that's how these happen? What is that supposed to be? Because they can't be so stupid, right? When I was a police officer, listen, I'm a city cop. And when we got the MDTs, is what we call them, mobile data terminals in our vehicles, in the beginning, we were kind of goofy and saying stuff like, oh, hey, what a dickhead, right? We typed that to another friend. And then we realized, oh, wait a minute. there's a record of all this stuff. So what happens after the initial, hey, these are fun to use in our cars as we're driving around, is that we understood that don't write or type or don't say anything over the radio. Don't type something on MDT. Don't talk to a supervisor or a lieutenant in any way that will get you into trouble later on, because everything is recorded. There's a record. We knew back when we just had pagers, not the page, hey, dickwad, because you can make sometimes certain things out of the numbers. You turn it upside down and it became letters, like hell was 7734, right? Remember those days where you could do stuff like that? We knew enough not to do that any longer because there's a record of all that stuff. This is back all the way to the 90s, right? All the way back to the 90s. So you're going to tell me in 2015 that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and the rest of them who are texting back and forth don't know that at some point, if something were to go completely wrong, that their page messages, their emails would eventually be seen? We know this because what happens? They delete all their emails and they try to scrub them. Hillary, right? All this stuff. So this one didn't disappear. The one where they said, due to our incompetence, that one did not disappear. Listen, I'm not making shit up right now. All right, I'm sorry for the cussing, but I'm kind of getting upset. I don't know why. I'm going to have to have a beer after this. Is that you got to understand. Do you not understand who you're dealing with here? Right? They're really not stupid people. They are kind of stupid, but they're not entirely stupid. There's a strange, they were dumb enough to think they could get away with it. How about that? But they know they've played this game before. They're not that stupid, right? Why do all these emails and text messages disappear, but these did not and become available, right? With little messages in there due to our incompetence, right? There's a little thing in there. It's not that he thinks he was incompetent. It's just they want to give him a little bit of wiggle room that, hey, sometimes we do things a little bit wrong. All right. So understand it. I hope I didn't go off on a little tangent there. All right. I got way too many notes here and I'm not going to get through all this stuff. So there's a couple things here I just want to point out before I sign off. Is this because I just wanted to lay the foundation that all that stuff is going on. You got, hey, let's just do this thing and let's hopefully he doesn't get elected. He ends up getting elected. Now there's chaos. Now they're figuring out who they can trust, who they can't trust. They get rid of that FBI agent who was in the room when they interviewed Flynn. We can't find him, right? He was the note taker. He's the one who actually wrote down the information that was happening. He's gone. His name has been taken off the FBI website, right? Why is that? Nobody else has got taken off during this period of time, but his did. He's the only guy that was in the White House interviewing Flynn along with Peter Strzok. Why is his name? Why is he gone? He's disappeared. I don't think that he's dead, but he's disappeared, right? You got so you got all this stuff happening, and then they finally they were going to get him on the Logan Act, which nobody's, you've heard this 100 times, that nobody's been ever convicted of the Logan Act since the 1700s or something like that. Even if then, I'm not sure that they did. You had a whole bunch, so they're trying to use that. And that was Obama's idea, according to what I'm reading, that he said, what about the Logan Act? Or somebody told him, what about the Logan Act? And they go, oh, let's try that. That's before they thought they could get him to lie, right? They just wanted to get him in a room so they could interview him. And then based on what we read, right, in text messages, let's see if we can get him to lie. Remember a couple weeks ago, I talked about that when you're spying on people, when you're surveilling people, when you're doing, you have to start with a crime. Do you understand? We didn't have a crime. We didn't have a crime to do that to Flynn. They'd already been doing it to everybody in the Trump administration, including Flynn and including a whole bunch of other people, right? They were doing it with the FISA and all this kind of stuff based on the Steele dossier, which they knew was fake and wasn't real and was paid for by the DNC and paid for by Hillary. You're telling me these people didn't know it? They knew. Again, they're going to say they did. Well, we thought it was real. No, they didn't know it. They knew it was fake. So they used it, right? And that was falling apart. So then they have to they go, oh, Logan Act. So now they're going, we kind of got a crime. Let's try that. We'll say that it's a Logan Act. And then hopefully in the process, he'll lie. And then we can get him on that, because we'll never get him on the Logan Act. That's the discussion in the Oval. I can tell you right now, as if I was there. I can hear the discussion. I can hear everything when they're saying. I can hear it as if I was there. And I'm telling you that I feel fairly confident in what I'm saying. Educated idiots. There we go. Thank you, PJ. Thank you. Exactly. They are arrogant. Adam Henry stands for assholes, just so you know, and that kind of talk. Logan Act hasn't been used since the 1700s. So thank you, April. Nice to see you. Yeah, it hasn't been used in forever. All right. So do you see this? What I'm telling you? Do you see what's happening? Chaos. Who's with us? Who's against us? Oh, Flynn's part of the Trump administration now. He's against us, obviously, right? But wait a minute. He knows everything. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows everything. What are we going to do? I know we're going to get him on the Logan Act. Hurry. But we were going to close that case because we couldn't find anything before. Well, what do we do? Well, don't close the case. Hey, is it too late? Is it too late that somebody already closed? No, due to our incompetence, we failed to close the case. Oh, perfect. All right, we're going to interview him. Let's see if we can get him to lie. We're going to tell him that we're investigating him for the Logan Act. Well, maybe, we won't tell anybody, but later on we can tell people. No, let's go in and we'll just tell them we're going to have a talk, right? We already leaked to the media that he's been cleared of all this wrongdoing, right? We'll tell the CNN on the same date, right? That morning of the date they're going to interview him. One of the news media, I think it was New York Times, maybe, or New York Post, said, oh, Flynn's been cleared of everything. So he'll lower his guard. They'll let us into the White House without the normal protocol, right? We can just go in, 2 FBI agents, and maybe an attorney was there. I can't remember now, just off the top of my head, but at least these 2 agents can come in and talk to Flynn. Normally that would not happen in any administration. Comey said that, right? In most administrations, you couldn't do that. But I thought, well, Trump doesn't know any better. Dude, you're supposed to be protecting the president. Dude. Trying to think of something nicer. Comey, your job as the FBI director is to be protecting the United States of America, not bringing down the United States of America. You dipwit, mother of pearl, right? No, but instead he's figuring out, how can I get 2 agents in there? He knows. I'm telling you, regardless of what you hear, regardless of what you're told, he knows that everything leading up to this point has been a lie anyway. He's only telling you, well, we thought that he was an FBI or a Russian agent. You did not, you lying sack of crap. All right. So he's trying to figure out, okay, well, they won't know. Let's go send these 2 agents in here. They won't know enough to keep them in there. And plus, we leaked this information saying that, Flynn is not under investigation. He's cleared. Blah, no big deal. Let's just have them go. And then Flynn will say, yeah, come on in. I'll talk to you. I have no big deal, because I'm assuming since we're taking over, this is the transition period, that you probably want to come in and just kind of get a feel for what's going on. Now, I don't know that Flynn was that. Flynn's not dumb. He's not a educated idiot. He is educated and he's smart, right? And he knows, because we find out later that he did know. All right, I'm going to show you some stuff right here really quick. All right, I'm so sorry. This was not supposed to be longer than an hour. And I think I have gone past an hour. Damn it. All right. So let me show you this stuff right here. So in a recent interview with the Daily Caller, Flynn said he didn't discuss sanctions, but did discuss the Obama administration's expulsion of 35 Russian diplomats. It said, were intelligent operatives. The move was part of the sanction package it announced on December 29th. All right. Why did I show you that? Because that's the discussion that he had. The FBI agents, Peter Strzok and the other dude, which I always forget his name, I can't pronounce it, Pientka, Pientka, Joe. I'll call him Joe. But then you might think I'm talking about Joe Biden. Doesn't matter. All right. So the other agent that was with Peter Strzok, they later on, which I'm going to show you, said that's what they talked about. But remember, what he's been charged with is lying to the FBI about talking about sanctions with the Russian ambassador. He's been charged with lying about discussing the sanctions with the Russian dude, ambassador, the Russian ambassador. That is the claim. That is the crime, all right, that he's been charged with, that they won't let go, that the freaking court won't let go. All right, that's the charge. That's the claim, right? He's not charged with lying about the guys being kicked out of the country. No, he's not charged with that because he said, that's what I talked about. I talked to that about you, right? Then there's an article, and then there's another one. All right, I may have to take my time with this because the font's a little bit smaller. Flynn insisted that he crossed no lines in his telephone conversation with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. If I did, believe me, this is Flynn talking, the FBI would be down my throat. My clearances would be pulled. There were no lines crossed. All right, again, speaking about how smart Flynn is, he's incredibly smart. I'm telling you, he knows. You don't have to be smart, right? I could tell you that. Flynn said there was a brief discussion of the 35 Russian diplomats who were being expelled, persona non grata, kicked out of the country by Obama in retaliation for Moscow's alleged interference in the 2006 campaign, which they knew didn't. Well, as far as the Steele dossier didn't happen, right? There's a possibility they did some other stuff. It wasn't about sanctions. It was about the 35 guys who were thrown out, Flynn said. So that's what it turned out to be. It was basically, look, I know this happened. We'll review everything. I never said anything such as we're going to review sanctions or anything like that. All right. He's been open about that. He's talked about that. That's what he talked about on this phone call. He was in the Dominican Republic talking to the Russian ambassador. They intercepted that call. Supposedly they did. Somehow they know this happened. So they know they did it. The reason I'm questioning that is because of something I'm going to show you in 1 minute. And he's saying, this is what happened. All right. So let's go on to another thing. So here's some court documents and things that were presented. And here, even in the court documents for his crime, the interviewing agents asked Flynn if he recalled any conversation with Kislyak, surrounding the expulsions of Russian diplomats or closing of Russian properties in response to Russian hacking activities surrounding the election. Flynn stated that he did not. Flynn reiterated his conversation was about the Putin, Trump, VTC, and Astana thing, the Kazakhstan conference described earlier. Flynn noted he was not aware of the then upcoming actions as he did not have access to television news in the Dominican Republic and his government BlackBerry was not working. All right, so he's saying I was in the Dominican Republic. I haven't been watching the news, and said yet they're questioning him, right, about this conversation. He goes, I was trying to tell the ambassador, I'm not informed on this stuff. I did talk about, the expulsion of the 35 Russian people, and that was it. Right? He's saying that's all I talked about, and so that there's nothing there about sanctions, right, in that discussion. And these are the words of the FBI agents. This isn't Flynn, just so you understand. All right, the interviewing agents or the attorneys. The interviewing agents asked Flynn if he recalled any conversation with Kislyak in which the expulsions were discussed, where Flynn might have encouraged Kislyak not to escalate the situation to keep the Russian response reciprocal or not to engage in a tit for tat. Flynn responded, not really. I don't remember. It wasn't don't do anything. The U.S. government's response was a total surprise to Flynn. Flynn did not know about the persona non grata, PNG, they call it, action until it was in the media. Kislyak and Flynn were starting off on a good footing, and Flynn was looking forward to the relationship with regard to the scope of the Russians who were expelled. All right. And then let's go on to the next thing here. And there's one more. There's another statement in the same courtroom documents. Told the government the Russians had taken into account the incoming administration's position with the expulsions. Again, we're only talking about expulsions. I can read that whole thing to you, but it's a lot to read. But the only things that are talked about is the expulsions. There's nothing talked about in regard to, oops, sorry about that, in regard to sanctions. Remembering, again, what they're charging Flynn with, or did, because they've dropped the charges, but again, the judge is not letting it go, is that he was charged with lying about the issue of sanctions in regard to U.S. And Russia for the 2016 supposed interference with our election. In none of those statements to the court in regard to the crime and the body of the crime and the elements of the crime say nothing about a conversation about sanctions, right? Nothing. But that's what they're charging him with. But maybe there's testimony, right? Maybe there's testimony in there and said, well, you did talk about sanctions, and that's why, and he lied and he said he didn't know anything about it. He did say, I don't know a lot. I've been in the Dominican Republic. I only caught like a little bit on the news, and what I've learned is by the news, so I can't comment, right? This is the conversations I have with the ambassador. Hey, I saw that. I don't know what to say about it. Let's try to keep the relationship going, though. And this is exactly what he should be doing. The media is saying, well, why is he talking to Russia? Because that's his job, right? That's his job, is to be talking to the Russians, to China, to Paris, to Australia, to all these people. That is his job. It's not against the law in his position. It's not against the law. If I were to talk to Russia, I could talk to Russia, somebody in Russia right now. That's not against the law, especially on an intelligence officer now who's trying to make sure and be ready for President Trump as they're coming in and trying to figure crap out with what Obama's left them. Obama left them with this crap. He's got to call and find out what's going. What are your and even ask, hey, what are your feelings about these things? Do you like it? Do you not like it? And try to get a feel for what it is they can use as leverage to get some stuff done. I'm going to try to stop cussing, but I'm so excited. All right. So here's one other thing that really is important. So you're saying, well, obviously they must have had a recording or a transcript of him saying, hey, I'm going to help you with those sanctions, right? There's got to be something like that in there. And I sound like Dan Bongino. Maybe I've been listening too much. But I'm going to show you a clip from Dan Bongino. And the only reason I want to reference him because a lot of this information that I was able to get for some of these screenshots are from his show. So I want to make sure and give him credit that that's where they came from. But here's one of the most important things that you have to know as somebody, because this is where people have been telling me that I'm completely wrong, that Flynn is a traitor, that he lied to the vice president and did all this stuff, right? But here we go. So this is the attorney in court asking about a transcript or videotape. The Justice Department rejected a federal, and it's blocked there. Dang it, I can't see what it says. I forgot what it says. To release the transcripts of the conversation retired Lieutenant General Flynn had with a Russian envoy. Now, let's go down, and because other stuff is just part of the Mueller's investigation, blah, blah, blah. A little explanation was given beyond stating that the materials were not relevant to Flynn's sentencing. They're not relevant. What? So then we have this part. The government further represents that it is not relying on any other recordings of any person for purpose of establishing the defendant's guilt or determining his sentence, nor are there any other recordings that are part of the sentencing record. So when she's asking about, well, can we see the transcript or the audio of this? Well, we don't have that. What? All right, so let's play. I'm going to play you a little bit of Dan Bongino bringing this up in his show, and that you can get another perspective. It's just not my perspective, and I'm not just parroting because I was reading this before he had this on his show. I'm so glad that he did because I was going to go, well, what do you mean? What is this? So let's listen to what Dan Bongino has to say about this. Also, former police officer, he was with Secret Service in the Bush administration. I think he was Jenna Bush's Secret Service team, and so. He has a lot of experience. He feels very similar to how I feel and says many things I say. So let's listen to him on his show here. I'm going to go ahead and make him solo here. Where is it? Da-da-da. Where'd he go? There we go. All right, listen to this.
But let's go first. Again, what are we talking about here? The potential that maybe Mike Flynn and his call with the Russians wasn't unmasked at all, and there's a more nefarious explanation. Let's go to screen grab one. This is a document from the court case against Mike Flynn, where Sidney Powell put in a motion. Sidney Powell's Mike Flynn's lawyer, saying, hey, listen, if you're going to charge Mike Flynn with lying about his call with the Russians and you're claiming to have the transcript or a recording of the call, can we see that? And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The government responds by saying, highlight here, the government further represents that it is not relying on any other recordings of any person for purposes of establishing the defendant's guilt or determining his sentence. Nor, wait, am I reading this correct? Paula, Joe, pay attention. Am I reading this correctly? Nor are there any other recordings that are part of the sentencing record. Well, that, yeah. But Joe, I'm not crazy. You read that. You read that. You can see. If you're watching the YouTube, everybody can read ahead. I didn't read that wrong. Right? There were no other recordings part of the sentencing record. So just to be clear, the government is charging, has now dropped the case, but is charging Mike Flynn with lying about the contents of a December 2016 call with the Russian ambassador. And yet the government has no recordings? Why would that be? Well, I'm kind of curious. I worked a lot of federal cases as a federal agent. I think that's my competitive advantage in this podcast space. And there's chains of evidence. When you have recordings, you have originals. Then you have to label recordings from recordings. You have to sign an evidence log when you take it out of the evidence vault. The assistant United States attorney, if they take custody, has to sign it, date it to make sure the recordings aren't manipulated. You're charging him with lying about a recorded call you've never actually produced a copy of? Claiming you don't even have it?
I'm back. Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. All right. Do you get that? What I loved when I saw that is that, sorry, I'm trying to find all my assets here that I just dumped. That was so odd. Dang it. Where's my stuff? There it is. All right. Do you see what I'm saying? That it's not just so many people, and I'm not sure why this is. They think it's just this flivorous thing that we're going through here, right? This flivorous thing with, oh, it's just this guy named Flynn, and we're just kind of hodgepodging this together. There are so many moving parts, so many things that have to happen in order for somebody to be imprisoned in a federal prison for a crime that simply is really kind of goofy. And you're saying, Andy, well, this is just like they just made a mistake on this and this kind of thing. No, we're talking about bringing down the president of the United States. And this is one of those steps that they use, right? You have a law. Why else is the director of FBI, the director of national intelligence, the director of the CIA, the director of the counterintelligence, the special counsel, a U.S. attorney, the vice president, all in a meeting if it's not that big of a deal? Now, understand that again, I'm going to go back to city, and I want just to make sure that you understand why I'm so incensed about this whole thing. Because in a city, as a city cop, right, when you arrest somebody for petty theft, there's chains of evidence. You have to have either a picture or the actual thing the person stole, right? You have to have that thing and show that this thing actually existed. Right? You have to have maybe the secret pocket in their coat that they use to hide it in. You take that and you book it into a little bag and you label it as evidence number 5934 blah blah blah. Right? And so you have the picture of the item that was stolen or the item itself. You have the coat that was used, and perhaps maybe there's fingerprints on the packaging, right? And you sometimes may want to get the fingerprints off the packaging to show that the person who you have in custody or that you're going to have in the courtroom matches that thing, that they're connected to it in one way or another, right? Maybe you have video of the person walking through the store, looking around, putting that thing that you have a picture of or actually have into that secret pocket and then walking out the front door. They have to go all the way out the front door. You can't have video of them just in the store putting in the pocket. That's not good enough. You have to have video of them in the store, hiding the thing, and then walking past the cash registers and out the door. That's what you need for a petty theft. You see where I'm going here? You have to have that for a petty theft. If you don't have that, if you don't have an eyewitness that said the guy went outside, if you don't have something that shows that the person, the woman or whoever went outside past the cash registers with the thing, that they never stopped and put it away as they left and left outside, right? Because then that would no longer be a petty theft. It may be malicious mischief because they destroyed the packaging or whatever. You would not be able to arrest them for petty theft because they didn't take the thing that they didn't pay for outside of the building. You have to have that. It must be present. It must be there. And so what you're trying to tell me is that a petty theft is more important to have all your evidence lined up and all your, I mean, I hate this saying that people use, but all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, right? You have to have that for a petty theft. I had to have that all lined up for a petty theft. And I know I'm really hitting this hard, but you got to understand that this is important, is that you have to have all that. But for a 3-star general hero in the next president's administration in charge of intelligence that you've been surveilling for several months, wiretapping, following, listening to, unmasking, all this stuff. But in this case, well, we don't have the recording. Yeah, no, we didn't feel like we needed it. We shredded it. All right. Or we acid washed it. We don't have a thumb drive of it. We don't have a transcript, somebody had to transcribe it, right? So that we had the words that were used so that we can know that the words used will fit in the body of the crime and the elements of the crime. So that they're all met. You have that, right? No. For the petty theft, you have to have that, but not for this. Are you really trying to tell me that right now? Yeah, where are the 302s? That's another thing. Yeah, the original 302s are all gone. And I probably could go there. I was trying not to talk about so many things, but the 302 is a report. Right? It's the 302. So the other agent that was in the room, he was in charge of writing out the 302 along with Peter Stroke, and they probably reviewed it, right? Yeah. Anytime where you as you are part of, so you have crimes where other people commit, right? These crimes against somebody else. And then we come in and we take the reports. What did you see? What did you do? Where's your evidence? And we collect it all. And then we put it in and then we submit it to the city attorney or the district attorney, right? You take all those things and that's about somebody else. Sometimes we are part of the crime, right? Where there's somebody that's, was involved in a robbery. They come out of the building. Like this would happen to me on a call. They come out of the restaurant where they're robbing all the people inside. They come out, they're in the dark. They got their masks on. As they come out, I see he has a gun. As he's walking towards me, I see him see me with a gun and he starts to kind of raise the gun up, but then he turns and runs and he looks like he's going to go back in the restaurant where all the victims are. And I fire and shoot at him. Right. And so I shoot him and then a whole bunch of other stuff happens. Right. So now I'm kind of part of this thing. Right. There's also an internal affairs investigation. All this stuff is going on. Right. And so there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So now I'm part of this investigation. Right. And so what kind of happens when the police officers or law enforcement are part of the investigation, we all, except for me, they all get together and let's make sure we're all on the same page. All right. So this is a much smaller situation for the most part, as far as the number of people just in this interview of General Flynn. It's 2 or 3 people. I can't remember exactly how many people are in there. I think it might be just the 2 agents. Right. But they're going to get together and say, okay, they're going to write it together, right? The first 302 that has disappeared and we can't find. And that is what's disappeared. So what happens in law enforcement is you submit a report. We don't call it a 302 in law enforcement. We call it, the police report. The original police report gets submitted. And then if more information is discovered, or we go, I think I wrote that, but now that I'm thinking about it, that's not what I saw. I saw something else or something else happened. Sometimes your memory will be jogged. That's why when I was involved in that shooting, I didn't get questioned until 10 days later. I think it was something like that. I can't remember how long it would be, but there was a period of time because sometimes and I thank God they did, because there was so much going on that I cannot tell you about. that you don't want to be interviewed right after a shooting. You want there to be a little bit of a few days where you can relax, because you may say something on day 1, but in day 5 you go, oh, you know what I forgot to mention is this thing. So what's that called? That's called a supplement to the original report. So you have supplement. So what ends up happening with the 302 with the FBI is the Lisa Page and maybe a couple other people said, you know, we don't like what that says. Let's rewrite it. And they rewrite it. So we cannot find the original one that was written. They rewrote it so that it matched the narrative of what they wanted, so that they could have the crime that they wanted. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's what Jason was bringing up, that where's those 302? There's more than one, actually, 302. There's a number of them. And the only one that I'm pretty sure there was 2. For some reason, I was thinking that there was one other person in there, but I think there was a discussion going in with some of the people, and then they went in and did that thing. Comey, of course, was one of those people that knew exactly what was going on. All right, so you got all that stuff going on. I got a couple more things. I'm so sorry, and I'm so sorry that I dropped myself off of the call there for a second, or off of the broadcast, but I hit the wrong thing. I was all excited to come back and show you something else. All right, so I got to bring this up because I already forgot what it is. So there was never any intelligence product. So no transcript of the summary of Flynn's conversation of Kislyak that were ever masked, and therefore were no unmasking requests that could have been made for these non-existent reports. This is a investigation, and I think this is one of the Congress transcripts. It was an intelligence product, as we use that term. Oh, I mean, the non-highlight part. So we just want to make sure that we have, for the record, a clear as possible understanding of exactly what the product was that was created, how it was disseminated internally and discussed internally, and whether or not there was any unmasking link to that report. If you have anything else to add to that, but that was the reason for why I was asking the specific line of questioning. I think your description is accurate. In other words, that there's no transcript of the summary of Flynn's conversation. There's no transcript. And then it was an intelligence product, as we use the term. And so now they're starting to kind of get flummoxed about what it is. And again, remember what I told you before. When you get somebody on the stand, whether it's an FBI agent, DEA agent, I've seen them all on the stand, when they are comfortable in what it is they're talking about. And again, most people don't testify. Most law enforcement officers never. I think that's pretty good. Many, if not most, police officers, agents, investigators do not get on the stand and testify. You may think that they're on the stand. No, a police officer could almost go his entire career and maybe be on the stand once or twice. So that it's not something I've been on there hundreds of times. And so I would like to say that I'm really good at it. I've been told that I'm really good at it. And because I listen to every question, and I won't answer a question unless I truly and fully understand, because some questions are asked in a way that they're trying to get, like what the media does, right? They're trying to get you to say something you shouldn't say. But when you have an agent, I think of this experience, who's now before Congress answering questions, which was that last thing there, is when they begin to get flummoxed and well, it's not that. And then because we're gonna, and I don't know. When you get that, they're lying, right? They're lying, or they're trying to cover something up, right? That is what's happening. When you begin to get that stammering, when I'm confident, when I know exactly what I'm talking about, it comes out and I tell you exactly what it is. Hey, this is what happened. This is what we did, and we messed up, or we did it right. Don't lie. But when you start getting what happened in that particular thing, is that they're beginning to lie, and it is not good. Let me get one more thing here before we go. And so here's Biden being asked about, the unmasking just the other day. So this is only a couple days ago. I know nothing about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn. I was aware that there was that they had asked for an investigation. And then he goes on. There's more, right? I think later on he goes, well, yeah, I think I didn't know. Have I made it clear? That's all BS. Now we also want to believe, and not believe. We also know that Biden has some issues going on upstairs. But again, he's lied about so many things over the years. And if you go back, even back when he had hair that was dark, kind of like me, back in those days, he was doing the same thing, right? So this isn't really. It's really hard to tell how much of it is his brain is going and how much of it is that he's just flat out lying. Especially this. Again, if I did anything, I hopefully laid out that this was a very important thing that was happening in the lives of everybody in the Obama administration. Everybody. They were sleeping, drinking, staying up at night, talking about, on their Blackberries, on their cell phones. There was a lot of activity. This is not something that later on you say, I don't remember what's going on. This is something very traumatic that just happened in their life. All right. So I hope I've laid that part out. That's kind of where I want to keep this. I went an hour and a half is a long show. I'm surprised I can still talk. Usually I can't continue. And I didn't even get, that's only page 2 of my, I've told you before in some of my other shows that I like to journal and take notes and I review things to write them down. I didn't even get to the other 4 pages of what I was supposed to write. So I more or less wanted to give you a tool to begin to look at things kind of like the way that I look at them. Again, I don't want you to be me. Just analyze them and really think about where their mindset is at the time when all this is happening. And that this is not over time become something that they can't remember. It is impossible for something that was so important at the time, so important for so many people. You can't have this many people all of a sudden have lack of memory. You have a number of people. You have a couple people that have disappeared and we can't find them and you can't talk to them, right? You even go to Adam Schiff and his whole, issue with the impeachment, right? The whistleblower, we haven't heard from him, right? You have things like with Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. Well, where they make these people go away. Why are so many of these people that are significantly important to certain situations that will tell us the truth? Why are those people gone? Strzok's partner, where is he? Other people, right? When you begin to look at it is from that point of view, why consistently people that will probably have a really important thing that we need, a memory of something, who weren't all the way in, right? You know who's in right away. You get somebody in a room and you begin to talk about stuff and you see the person kind of leaning back and kind of going, you go, okay, that person's not with it. Hey, would you mind, Freddie, would you mind going getting us some coffee really quick? Wait, anybody else want any coffee? You want some? Okay, we got 5 orders. Can you go get some coffee really quick? We just need some coffee. You're like the low man on the totem pole or whatever it is. You go get it because they can see that you're not all in. Have I ever been in any of those meetings? Absolutely. Right. We know when officers, remember I told you about when you have something that's involving the police department. I'm not telling you that we're necessarily crooked when we do that. I think it's important that a SWAT deployment, when we go out and we kill somebody, there's been a couple of times where we go in and we've got to go in and the guy, we had to shoot the guy, right? Because he gave us no choice. He's got a gun and all this kind of stuff. It's called a debriefing. Have you ever heard of a debriefing? Do you think they know at no time debriefed any of this stuff? Really? Do you think all individually they're just kind of doing their own thing? Hey, what do you got? I don't know. What do you got? And they kind of just go, yes, just give it to me and we'll write it up and then we'll see you in court. We'll see you. Hey, when this gets blown up, and we're in Congress, I'll just see you then. No, there's debriefings when you have something that involves an activity that is involving one of your own. Flynn, in a sense, was one of their own, but he was on the wrong side, right? And so there's things called debriefings. They call it other names. There's other kinds of names for it, where they all get together and say, okay, let's all get on the same page. All right, what did you do? What did you do? No, you didn't do that. You did this. Oh, okay, I did this. I didn't do that? No, you weren't part of there. Were you? As a matter of fact, you weren't there. Is there any way that they can find out whether you were there or not? I don't think so. All right, let's go with that. And if later they discover something, we'll just say we forgot. That is what happens. All right. I'm just telling you the truth. I've been in those rooms. Right. And I kind of sometimes been the guy in the room going, really? You want to say that? You want to go there? Because these things happen. All right. So I know this went on way too long. Wow. Some of you have been on the entire time and I so appreciate you. PJ, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you. April, thank you. I appreciate it. This was a lot. And I hope that I did it justice. I hope that I kind of explained, and I know that I have this thing of going off on these little bunny trails and that kind of stuff. An entertaining, informative afternoon. Thank you. Actually retire the 28th of May, and will be my last day. I am working now, enjoying listening to you. Thanks again. Oh, you're welcome. Paul is one of those guys. I will never forget the time working on the streets with him out there in Sector 5 and all the fun, all the fun we had. Some of the things I can tell you, some of the things I can't. Just not because it was horrible, not because we committed some horrible crime, but because, we're dudes and we were having a good time. Hey, isn't it a shift show? Yeah, Pasadena. He's a jerk. Can't wait till he goes down. Thanks for part of being kind of what my new show. Look at Wiener. Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. There's all kinds of stuff. 2 agents. Thank you. And so, so this is a look at what the show may or may not look at going forward. And I'm going to play my video that I played at the beginning. Again, I just want you to take a look. This is not the final product. It's the prototype of what it is that's going to be coming out, the beta version of what's going to be happening with the Andy Falco show. As moving forward, it's going to be more of a show that kind of just talks about all kinds of subjects throughout the day. That's kind of what I feel more comfortable doing now is, I used to have these focus shows, but I'll be coming on talking about opening California, about other stuff that's really important to talk about. We need to open up the gyms, and we need to open up the churches, and all the open space churches. Oh, and the schools. There's nothing that I've seen scientifically or anyway that those 4 things need to continue to be closed based on Home Depot being open, Walmart, Costco, marijuana shops. If you have those open, they've been open the entire time. There's no reason why a church, a gym, and our schools should not be open based on the science and everything that's been happening. And we're going to be talking about that pretty soon, as soon as I put some information together and see who I can get on as a guest. Because I know you don't like just hearing from me all the time. That's why I kind of brought on Dan Bongino. Make sure and listen to his podcast or watch his podcast on YouTube. And that is it. I appreciate you. Here's my intro video playing as my outro video. We'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.